Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second Facebook Live on Musk Twitter for 2023. And I picked tonight to kind of update us. First of all, not a heck of a lot has happened other than the media largely catching up on what we have already been discussing and the importance of the looming interest payment and the capital structure. Everything we've been kind of talking about in this series over the last month and a half, now the media's caught up on. But I wanted to give us a sense tonight on what the triggers are and where things stand, even though day to day, again, a heck of a lot has been happening such that we needed to do these more frequently. But first of all, happy 1 month anniversary. Guess what happened 1 month ago today? Elon Musk did his poll after being under pressure because Tesla's stock was trading down and asked whether he should step down as Twitter CEO. And indeed, the poll said he should, even though we said that poll itself, like all his other polls, was a sham. But we are exactly 1 month from that. And there, as I told you was going to happen, there is still no one that wants to fall on this sword for Elon Musk. So Elon Musk is still CEO of this ship going down, this Musk Twitter ship going down very quickly. No one else is stepping in to take his place. So we've been talking a lot about the capital structure. And remember, we said that in April 2022, Musk decided on impulse to buy this company, to buy Twitter. He basically forced the company to sell. At that point, he made a cutesy bid, $54.20 a share, which equated to valuing the company at $44 billion. Then he tried to walk. The equity market traded down. He couldn't walk. He had to close. And he ended up closing on October 27th of last year. And at that point, as we said, the company was worth about half of what he paid for it. So he paid the equivalent of $44 billion valuation. When he closed, it was worth about $22 billion. And since he took it over, as we've talked about, things have gone into disarray. At the year end, remember the Wall Street Journal had said about 70% of the top advertisers had pulled. The numbers that are out now indicate that the run rate of revenue is down about 40% from when he took over. So just putting, a rough estimate out there, I had said in these Facebook Lives that the company was probably worth around 10 to 20 billion. Well, we know in the last 2 weeks, somebody has made a public bid of 15 billion for the company. So exactly what we thought. That would essentially wipe out Musk and all the equity investors. And why is that? Well, to finance his bid in total, the purchase price, including fees and everything else, and excuse me, I have to get used to doing this. This is backwards for me, so it can be forward for you. In total, the purchase price, including fees and whatnot, was $46.5 billion. Of that, these banks, the $13 billion, which is what we're going to talk about tonight and we've been focused on, were forced to close. There were 7 banks. The banks were forced to close, just like Musk was forced to close, because when he made his initial bid, they agreed to finance it. Then there's this other $33.5 billion. The majority of that is owned by Musk. But then again, there were a bunch of other holders that we identified last time, the Qatari Fund, a Saudi prince, a couple of like Larry Ellison, some of the venture capital funds out there, the douche bros out there, they were all behind him. Those are the $33.5 billion. And remember, we've discussed that this bank debt needs to be paid out in full, 100 cents on the dollar, before these guys see a single penny. So you can see if 15 billion is what this company's worth, these guys down here, the 33.5 billion, are going to split about 2 billion between them, which is about 6 cents on the dollar. So where does that leave us right now? Okay, so let's go back to the bank debt, because that has been the crux of this thing all along in our series, and everyone else is starting to catch on now. these are the bank loans. Again, 7 banks hold them. Under normal circumstances, these 7 banks would have syndicated it down. So they would have a very small holding, if any. And what syndicated means is you're basically underwriting these, you're the agent bank. And then if the company's healthy, you go to all the other banks and everyone says, okay, I'll take 10 million, I'll take 10 million. And it's called selling it down. So as a bank, you hold very little. This was a failed syndication. So these 7 banks hold all of this between them. Again, there was a term loan of 0.5 billion of revolving credit. This is traditional bank loans, term loans and revolving credit. Then there were 2 bond tranches, a senior bond tranche and a junior unsecured bond tranche that pays a coupon, an interest rate of 11 3/4. We had discussed on this series that at one point the banks at this bottom tranche tried to get Musk to put his own personal Tesla stock and refinance this lowest tranche to get the interest rate lower to help him, but also the banks. This stuff is worth not a lot. So they were trying to get him to back a refinancing of this lowest tranche against his personal Tesla shares when Tesla was at happier times. That did not happen. So 13 billion. We also know, according to reporting, that at the end of the year, the banks did a mark-to-market on their balance sheet. So they wrote down already this 13 billion loan, they wrote down by 4 billion. So right now on the bank's balance sheet, it's worth 9 billion. They've already taken, on average, for the 4 slices, about a 31% hit to what they own already. And what does that mean? That means the banks do not expect to be paid back in full. And if the banks don't get paid back in full, again, what does that mean for Musk and his buddies who own the equity? It means it's worthless. And a lot of you have asked, well, how do we get there? Okay, so I wasn't sure when we spoke before because sometimes bank debt, when you pay it down, you can have a monthly payment. You can borrow under a monthly LIBOR rate and pay it monthly. From what reporting indicates, the first interest payment, actually, he did it all quarterly. So the first interest payment is coming. It's going to be on or around January 27th. That is D-Day for Musk Twitter. Musk now needs to decide if he wants to pay that interest payment. The amount that he owes, according to FT, the Financial Times, according to FT, the total interest on all of this, on all 4 pieces, again, he has to pay interest on all 4 of these. According to FT, the total interest payment per year is 1.5 billion. So I just divided that by 4. That means this quarterly payment, according to FT, he owes 375 million for just this quarter alone. According to Bloomberg, it's 1.2 billion, so he owes about 300 million this quarter. And again, the D-Day is coming in the next couple of weeks. So what would happen? A lot of you have said, well, how does this change hands? If Musk does not pay that interest payment, the banks have the right, there might be a cure period, it might be for 30 days. Again, the loan agreement is not public. But in pretty short order, if he didn't cure it or pay it, it's probably something like 30 days, the banks would put this company into bankruptcy. And then what happens in bankruptcy? The bankruptcy court values the company. And then, again, based on this waterfall, the banks get paid out first, and then whatever's left goes to the equity holders. So seemingly, the equity holders would get wiped out. The banks would essentially take ownership of this company. So what's probably happening now? Well, what's Musk doing? He's just hurting the brand even further. He's hurting his other brands. I saw a Morning Consult poll that had just polled people on what you think of the Tesla brand, not the Twitter brand, the Tesla brand, since Musk took over. And the net, and in terms of the net positive, it had declined by 16% in just a month. This was just from October to November. So you start to see people and out of the net number, it was negative 20 for Democrats and plus 4 for Republicans. And the people in this poll, in Morning Consult polls, also asked the Republicans who viewed it more favorably whether they planned to buy these Teslas, and the answer was no. So, I mean, in terms of the emperor has no clothes and just being like, just plain bad business person, to hurt your own brand that way, to hold on to this Twitter fantasy, it's really quite extraordinary to me. But again, you know, we've talked about hubris and the emperor has no clothes and being, you know, this whole Putin and Trump kind of mentality of being surrounded by yes people and emperor has no clothes and never facing any consequences. Now Musk is facing consequences. So what's probably happening right now? Well, obviously he hasn't replaced the CEO. He's still the CEO of Twitter. He could well be in conversations with the banks. Likely those conversations are occurring about potentially buying them out. And what would it mean if he bought them out? Say he could buy them at, since they've already written it down to $9 billion. Say the banks would agree to sell him their $13 billion at $9 billion. That means that Musk has to put in another $9 billion. Where is that money coming from? Are there potentially people stupid enough to invest more in this company? I don't know. So either he's having some sort of conversation to buy them out, or he's trying to figure out how to pay back roughly $375 million. Now that's a lot of coffee pots you got to sell and a lot of Twitter signs. We've talked about the 3 red flags that there would be trouble with this company. And the first red flag is not paying your bills. And what has Musk been doing? Not paying his bills. He has closed one of the 3 data processing centers. He is being sued in San Francisco for not paying the rent for their headquarters. Similarly, he's closed offices in Seattle, in Asia, in Europe. He's not paying in New York. He's not paying janitors. People working for him don't have toilet paper. There are fewer and fewer people working for him. He's not paying vendors. He's not paying severance for employees. He promised them 3 months. He's paying them 1 month. And he's continuing to fire people. Approximately 3/4 of the people that worked for Twitter when he took over no longer work for Twitter. And his whole thing is, don't pay consultants that handle our moderation, don't pay bills, don't pay landlords, don't pay employees, and we can get the expenses down. And like I said in our other sessions, great, I run a restaurant. I can make a lot more money if I don't pay the cooks and the waiters and everybody else. I can make a lot more money. As an airline, I can pay a lot more money if I don't pay the stewards and the people that check you in and the baggage handlers. I can make a lot more money if I just stiff them. Guess what? You have to pay your employees. You have to have employees to do these jobs. So this is not a long-term strategy. So that was one red flag. The other red flag was his ability to generate other revenue and his idea of the subscriptions. Well, that seems to have fallen off a cliff. Still yet, I look at my iPhone and I don't see that I can even subscribe on Apple. And that was the second red flag, that was not going to be able to happen, that would not be widely embraced or offered. That revenue stream has fallen away. So as we talked about at the front, approximately 40% of the revenue has been wiped out of advertising. Advertising was 90% of this company's revenue to begin with. When Musk bought it, the company's run rate was about $4.8 billion a year of revenue, okay? And he has cut that roughly in half. And he's got to pay somewhere, remember we said, either 1.5 or 1.2 billion a year when you're making about 2.4 billion of revenue a year. There's not much left after you pay the bank's interest. This is not a viable solution. This is not working. So, okay, what that means, there needed to be some vision. And supposedly there was this grand vision of revenue, where it was going to come from. The subscription thing did not work out. Then there was selling off handles, you know, people's names and trying to monetize those. That's not going to get us anywhere. So what will happen? Okay, say that he does, supposedly this company, according to him, has about $1 billion cash on its balance sheet left. That could be money he put in. It could be left over at the time of acquisition. It's burning through cash, but it's just cash left over. So he can, in concept, pay the interest, but we'll be having the same conversation in 90 days. So unless he has a real business plan for turning this around, this is just dumping money into the toilet. This is just getting rid of money that you don't have to get rid of. And a more practical solution for him is either to sell the company at some price or to bankrupt it, put it into bankruptcy. But we'll know for sure in the next 2 weeks if he's going to make this payment. And if he makes the payment, we'll be having this conversation February 1st, because guess what? He's going to have to pay again in the next 3 months. And that money is coming out of basically value of the company, which is very limited. As we said, if he were to sell this company for, say, $15 billion, which seems to be what it's worth now, the recovery for he and his buddies would be roughly 6 cents. Let me just see if I can have that sheet to show you how we get at that. Yeah, so here's, if he sells this company for $15 billion instead of filing for bankruptcy, the first $13 billion of that goes to the banks. Remember we said they have to get paid out in full before he and the equity holder see anything. Then this other $2 billion is split between all the rest of them. So it's about 6 cents on the dollar. And that's what their equity investment is now worth. So now the rest of the world is catching up with us. I will take some of your questions if you have any. And, you know, other than that, there's just not been a hell of a lot going on with Twitter because, you know, everyone thought this guy had some grand vision and he was going to reinvent what is basically a boring news app. What's basically happened instead is Twitter's relevancy has diminished significantly. I mean, you can watch the evening news, you can see what I see. It used to be every time you watch the evening news, any sort of news show, it would be people's tweets up on, you know, whatever it was, CNN or whichever station, you know, as sort of their mouthpiece, and you would see it all over the media. You see that less and less. Twitter is becoming less of a central meeting place for voices and opinions. So he's done that, and along the way, he's killing his car company as well because the emperor has no clothes. So I will take, if you have questions, you can write them as a comment now, and I will take a few questions. And if you wrote your question already, you're gonna just probably need to write it again so it will scroll, because I do not, I have to get back to them otherwise. So if you have a question, I'll take a couple questions, just write it now. DeSantis is next. Yeah, well, that's a topic for another day. I read that secured bonds underscrewed bonds. Yeah, the bonds are in trouble. I mean, all of this debt is, he's either going to pay it or we're in trouble for him. What about the employees' severance and vendors who have contractual claims on the money? Are they compensated before the banks? Good question. So it all goes into a pot. There's a valuation, and the bankruptcy court determines if they come before or after the banks. Most likely the banks come first. And, you know, but it depends on the nature of their claims. Some of these claims might come before. The severance claims might have no standing. They're apparently now, he just screwed these people, including like janitors that were living paycheck to paycheck and just decided not to pay them. And they can't file a class action against him. So they all have to do it individually, which they might do. And some of those claims might come ahead of the banks. It depends on the nature of their claims and, you know, whether it's an ongoing organization or being sold. There's a lot of different factors that go in, but the employees are probably, he screwed them. There's no other way to put it. Someone outbid me for the giant neon bomber. He's just limping along. I think what is happening is it's his ego and his reputation. Because this thing is he's driven it into the ground and he's exposed who he is. And look what's happened to Tesla. The stock was down 65% last year. Do you know whether there is any criminal liability or exposure for fraud? No, there's no fraud here, just bad judgment, bad decision making. I haven't seen anything to indicate any fraud. Will someone else build a platform to fill the void Twitter is leaving? My personal belief, as I've said to you up front, is that Musk Twitter is not going to be long, that somebody else, either through bankruptcy court or before this interest payment or the next interest payment, will make a bid for this company, and he'll finally do the rational thing, because he has lost far more money in value in Tesla stock, multiples of that, versus what he lost in his 26 billion in Tesla. So I believe eventually this company will be sold. I believe whoever the buyer is, whether it's an individual or somebody, a venture capital firm, private equity firm who puts it back to being public, will have learned from these lessons. We didn't even touch on all the issues he's having with regulatory agencies as well. The next player, we should hope, learns the lessons and wants a profitable platform and is going to do more what Twitter used to do and what Facebook is increasingly doing, which is to make it a pleasant experience to be there so people will return. Anytime I don't go to Twitter, it's amazing how quickly you stop using things you're so used to. I mean, it's such an angry place to be. It was something I needed during the Trump era to keep up on news, but quality of life wise without Twitter is much better. And when I have gone just to see what's going on over there, the stuff that's trending, it used to be a place that you found breaking news. Now it's largely sports stuff or finance stuff, like his bros trying to explain to you why you should buy Tesla stock and GameStop and all the rest of it. And Bitcoin, don't forget Bitcoin. What are your thoughts about the court case related to his tweets in 2008? So, ironically, of all things, there is a court case that started. Jury selection was yesterday. The arguments were today. Musk has used Twitter in 2018 to tweet that he had a private buyer, in other words, somebody who was going to buy the whole company and buy out the stock of Tesla at basically $420 a share. It caused people to buy or cover shorts and lose a lot of money. And it was false information. So now he tried to have this case moved from California, San Francisco, where he just fired all these people and is not paying his rent and not paying vendors, to Texas. And the judge said no. So now at issue is whether Elon Musk is a liar. Literally, that's what this trial is about. So this is bad for him. And the irony, the irony does not stop. That he used a tweet, and because of him saying these things on Twitter, is getting sued for billions of dollars and could lose. Oops, sorry. Let me see, are there any other questions? Can Tesla shareholders sue him? The Tesla shareholders, and as a result of that, this court case, Musk was formerly chairman of the board of Tesla. He had to step down as part of a settlement with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And Tesla had to pay a large fine. So this is separate to that, from that 2018 incident. So he's on Tesla, is no longer chairman of the board, but his brother is still on the board, and his board is largely cronies. So it's hard for the activist investors. You saw that last year, them screaming and yelling and telling the board to do this and that and to control him. Obviously, that didn't happen. What appears to therefore have happened is a lot of the shareholders just sold. I mean, don't forget, this stock was over 300. It came close to being under 100 at one point. Now it's hovering between 100 and 130. But no, they unless there is something specific, they can't sue him. They can just try to be more activists. Has he paid severance yet? What about him selling the Twitter icon light? He's not paying severance. He had promised, remember when he first bought the company, he said he was going to lay off half of the employees. At this point, over 3/4 of the employees have been laid off or fired or resigned, and there's more firings coming next week, according to news reporting. But part of that promise was he was going to pay them 3 months, and he just screwed them. He said, I'm going to pay you 1 month, fight me on it. And so they have to decide if they want to go to court and fight him for the extra 2 months. Obviously, he didn't pay them bonuses, but he screwed them on that. So this is who this person is, this billionaire screwing like regular people who, were using this money to pay their rent and their bills and everything else. All the tweets are 18 hours old now on Twitter. Sad. I know Twitter is, it's like lost its relevance. Yeah, and there's also been a lot of system issues, a lot of technical issues that are broken, and that's all something we talked about, something that all the engineers, when you fire like 3/4 of your employees, and including all these engineers, and you bring in temporary engineers from Tesla and from SpaceX, but eventually they have to go back and do their jobs, there's going to be technical issues. It's, what the engineers had said is it would break down over time, not immediately. Will he be able to pay the debt this January? So that will be the next question. He has the money to pay it, but once you pay that, you keep the banks, you keep it current. You buy yourself another 3 months of life as a company, but that's money out the door that you're not getting back, and that's a lot of money for this company. Again, we said in the beginning of the year when he bought it, they were making about $4.8 billion. He's lost about half of that revenue. So this company's probably making around $2.5 billion of revenue, top line. And if he's going to pay out like 300 or 400 million of interest out of that for just 1 quarter, there's just not much left. I mean, he can prolong it. It would be kicking the can down the road, basically. He's got to figure out if he wants to sell this company or put it into bankruptcy and walk away. I found I can no longer upload videos onto my Twitter account. Everything else seems to work. Yeah, I mean, people are saying all sorts of different things are breaking. I haven't been on, so I don't know. I will take one more question if anyone else has any other questions about Musk Twitter. And again, I'll check back if there's any major news, or else we will check back after this interest payment is due, and we'll see if he makes it and tries to buy another 3 months of time, or if he just throws in the towel on this thing. But again, we are a month now into the time, a month from today, from when he said he would step down, and hasn't found anyone to take his place. The algorithm is a mess. Feeds are filled with random people. You have to look at a few you follow who still post. Yeah, he also changed the algorithm. So, okay, folks, signing off. Keep an eye, and we will check back on or around January 27th to see if this company is in bankruptcy, being sold, or if he's going to kick the can down the road. Until then, signing off. Thanks for tuning in.